Hey, welcome to Woodford Guitars. Thanks for stopping, checking out the channel. Today I want to share with you how I usually start some builds. I have these 3 boxes, this Pure Evil, almost an aluminum color. Probably seen that in a video before. We've got this green Macanudo box, Solas box, which is pretty nice, and I like what it says. So I purposely picked 2 boxes that were longer than my usual builds. I picked those on purpose. Now I also have some red oak, some poplar, and this really gnarly looking piece of pine timber here. So the first thing is I get the box and I just kind of imagine what I want. Now I've had time to think about this one, and actually one of the viewers kind of went back and forth about this box. So we're going to have a black neck. It's going to be dyed black with a water-based dye. It's a certain kind that was suggested by that viewer, and I'm kind of excited about that. And this has an aluminum look, and it's got me wondering about what hardware to use on it and what pickups. But I already know that I'm going to do a black neck. Now this Macanudo is the one that's going to actually get this big boat of a neck. It doesn't have its headstock yet. It's actually sitting around here somewhere, still in the board form. This one is also going to get this as a tailpiece if I can get it bent correctly. I'll probably do a homemade bridge on this one. This is going to get this pine neck. It'll probably stay clear, just clear lacquer. No dye, no stain. And this guy, really big box, is going to get this poplar neck. And again, I'm not 100% sure on what hardware I want to use, but I do want 2 pickups in this thing. That's for sure. And this is going to be a 4-string. So if I make the tailpiece and bridge, or whether I buy it, still up in the air, but this is going to be a 4-stringer. I just start imagining, daydream. Let me get a close-up of the Pure Evil box. And let me get a close-up of the Macanudo. And I'm going to pull that piece out, and I'm going to use that. And the Solas box. Get a shot of that, because I think that's cool. Now all 3 of these guitars are getting scarf joints. You can see this. The neck is still in square. It's not been shaped or anything yet. This is just to get to this point so I can actually lay the guitars out. Now Pure Evil is going to get this oak neck, and I will end up staining that one. Alright, so I want to get my necks to this point before I start doing my layout. So roll that beautiful bean footage, and I'll show you how I get to this point. Since I'm using scarf joints on these guitars, that is where I will start, on the miter saw. Now this jig helps me make a 15-degree angle on the ends of these boards, a sharper angle than I can achieve on the miter saw. I do have a video about this jig and my glue-up jig that I will use here in a minute, and I'll leave a link to that below in the description. The wood I'm using here is 3/4 inch by 1.5 inch, or 19 millimeter by 38 millimeter. And if what you have available is 20 millimeter by 40 millimeter, that's perfect, that'll work. I cut the headstock piece 9 inches long, 230 millimeter, and the neck piece is about 30 to 32 inches long, 760 to 820 millimeter, depending on the box. You will most likely need a couple more pieces of wood for the heel of the guitar, the part that goes inside. I usually make mine 1.5 inch or 40 millimeter longer than the box, so it will stick out and you can shape it how you wish. After the angles are cut, I take a piece of the same wood, cut off about 6 inches, about 154 millimeter, then split it in half, and these are glued to either side of the headstock to make it wider. And that's just something I want. It's just a preference. You don't have to do that. You can do narrow or any shape you want. That's just how I like to do it. So once that's dry, I use a template and trace out the headstock shape. Now I'm always making small adjustments, so none of these have been the same. And then I cut this out on the bandsaw. Before I can do that, I have to change the tires on the bandsaw. The material these tires are made out of has yellowed over time. And I really don't know how this happened because it's on the top wheel and usually stuff gets thrown down in the bottom. So this is a Delta 8-inch bandsaw and the tires are readily available on Amazon, roughly 20 bucks. I will leave a link below to the kind that I'm using here, the new kind. And they're made from a different material, I'm not sure. The only trick to installing these is some kind of spring clamps. I get as much of the belt on as possible without really stretching the belt, and I put 2 spring clamps, one on either side, then I pull and stretch the tire on. Now these tires are way more stretchy and flexible than the last one, so they were a lot easier to put on in comparison. Now I got lucky and everything worked out. Tracking is fine, had to adjust the guides a little bit. And now I cut these out on the bandsaw. I thinned down the headstock to 0.6 inches or about 5/8 of an inch or about 15 to 16 millimeters, whatever you want to use. So check the tuners or machine heads that you're going to use and make sure that you get the right dimension there. So, and then I head to the sander. If you have a spindle sander, it'd work great for this kind of a shape. I use the end of a sander where the wheel is, but yeah, hang on to it. So lots of sanding, lots of sanding. Now it comes time to glue up the scarf joints. I use this jig, video link below, and I dry fit the pieces, clamp them down, and I drill 2 small pilot holes for the alignment pins. Add glue, stick the pins in, put it together, clamp, let it sit, on to the next one. So I let these dry at least 45 minutes and then I'll pull them off of this jig, and I don't put any kind of pressure on the headstock. I make sure it's just hanging there, and then I'll start gluing up the next one. Alright, so now that I'm at this point, this is where I enjoy this part. This is the fun part. So let me set this neck aside, and hopefully you can see some of this. It's going to be a little tough. Alright, so I will take and jack my neck up a little bit, take my box, and set the neck on the box. That's not the best board for that. Okay, I just set my board on there. Then I take my fretboard blank, which is oversized, still needs to be trimmed down. It's a piece of poplar, but it's full of color and it's going to get dyed black, so what's it matter? I decide if I'm going to use nut or 0 fret by this point, so I know where my fretboard is going to start. And I just lay the fretboard on there where I think it needs to be, and then I take my, and I think it needs to be here, and it's hard to tell, but exactly where that shadow is where the nut is going to sit. So there's going to be a nut here, then the fretboard. So in a minute you'll see a piece of paper I wrote down, nut then fretboard. That's what that means, that the nut is not in the fretboard like on Strats, where the fretboard actually will be shaped down right here, and the nut is actually in the fretboard. There's fretboard wood on either side of the nut. This isn't going to be that way. This is going to be like my other guitars, like that guy. Nut then fretboard. So that's how Pure Evil is going to get a nut. I'm not sure exactly what material yet. So I lay the fretboard blank on the neck. Then I take my CB Giddy template. This is a 24 3/4 inch scale. So I know my nut's going there. I can line that up. I get it close to where I want everything. There's always going to be little minor changes, but I deal with those while I'm putting it together. Probably cut that part because it's like I'm rambling. Okay. So I've got a stack here of my neck, the fretboard blank, then my template, then this ruler. And the reason I put this ruler on here is so I can see exactly where my scale length is, which is 24 3/4. That's where my bridge is going to be. So now I will just lift up and slide this to where I think I want my bridge, which is usually about 2 inches off of the back. That's just kind of what I like. It's worked for me so far. I might try something different. I'm not saying I won't. Here's my basic layout. Let me get you a close-up. Right. You can see maybe the gap in the template is where the nut's going to be. And that whole thing needs to come forward. Well, I'm just, what? Oh my goodness. Now, you can see the fretboard blank, the hole in the template where the nut will be, and then the ruler are all lined up. They might be off just a tiny bit. That's not the biggest concern right at this point. You have some room to play when you put in the nut. Not really room to play, but if it's off by, you know, 1/2 millimeter, I'm not going to stress that. Okay, so you can see I have this laid out, which allows me to come down here and put this right at 24 3/4. That's where the bridge is going to be. That's the scale length. So that's where the bridge is. And then I look at where I want the bridge on the box. Roughly 2 inches from this back side. And you can do whatever you want and change that up one way or the other. But this size of box, that's pretty much where I like it. So what that gives me is about 17.5 inches, maybe 17 3/4 to the actual lid. So my fretboard will be about 17 3/4, and that gives us 21 frets. So I will write those numbers down, and that's my basic, that's it, it's laid out. I know where I need to cut my fretboard. I know where I need to cut this 27 right on that box lid sidewall line. It's 27. So I'm good to go on that one. And that is basically how I do my layouts. When it comes to the next guitar, we'll do this Cigar, because this one's going to be different. I'm going to do something I haven't done before. I've seen some other builders do it, and I really liked it. I thought it was pretty neat. I like the look. Alright. So this box has a fatter interior. I got to keep that in mind. Now, I'm using the same neck because they're basically the same thing. I mean, I could batch these things out. They're all pretty much the same. Leave them a little long. You can cut them where you want them. And this cutoff on this one, this cutoff here is long enough to make another headstock with a scarf joint. So it's not waste. So same thing. This one's going to have a nut. So same thing, I have everything lined up for the nut, and we come on down. There's my 24 3/4, and that's about 2 inches off the back. We'll have to nail that one. This one's going to be a little bit trickier for me. This is the first one I've done. What I want to do is bring the fretboard over the box. I seen Michael Breedlove of MGB Guitars build something like that, and Robert Bird, I think is the last one I seen build one like that. I think they look really cool. It looks more like a traditional guitar with a fretboard, because the neck is in a neck pocket, the fretboard comes up into the body, and I think that's what that looks like. So on this guitar, I want this fretboard coming up in here so far, but I'd love to get at least 21 frets, but I also want room for a couple of pickups. I'm thinking, since I'm limited in room back here, this is going to be my bridge. I'm thinking about doing a dual rail humbucker like I just used in the small 23-inch scale black, which I got 23 black. Use it like that here because it's narrow like a single coil, but it's a humbucker and I like the way it sounds. And then up in the front, I'm thinking more of a single coil, like a traditional telly style lipstick pickup, or just a thinner sounding one. Same scale length, and fretboard's going to come up, and if I want 21 frets, then I need to come up, and I'm going to be about the same. For my fretboard's going to be around 17 and a half, and I'm still looking at 27 to the heel, to the bottom, but I don't know what is that called. That's basically how and once I get to this point, oh man, it's so much fun now. Right. Now, I write all these numbers down, and I also write down some ideas. And for one, when I started this video, it is Tuesday, 7 p.m. It's 89 degrees outside with a feels like of 97. I'm in the shop, and because the fans are noisy, I had to turn them off. It's a little warm in here. So you guys up north that are getting those 50 degrees already, yeah, I'm almost jealous. Almost, because I know what you go through in the wintertime. All right. What I have written down here, I'm going to show on the screen. So you can see my horrible, quick handwriting and some of my ideas, like for the dual rail and a single coil and tailpieces and bridges, what we're going to do. So I'm not saying this is the way to do it. I'm not saying it's the only way. It's just the way I'm doing it right now, and especially for the scarf joint guitar necks. So next we'll be marking and prepping the fretboards and cutting slots. And I have a new tool in the shop just for that, a CB Giddy miter box. It's an upgrade to the last one I had, and I'll talk a little bit about it. And we'll have to put this thing together and try it out. We'll see how it works. Alright, if you're still watching, thank you. Comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really does help the channel, and I appreciate it.